What's up, YouTube? I'm here again today with another video. This story is just very, very hard to get away from for me, and a lot of you have shared that with me as well, that it's very hard for you guys to get away from. And I'm trying to understand, I guess. I'm trying to understand. Me and my husband got into a kind of heated debate over dinner tonight about this situation because, like I told you, he feels that, you know, Junior was doomed from the beginning, from before the attack happened in the bodega, and I will agree with him. I try not to look at the videos, but they're hard to get away from. And when he went into the bodega, he just looked exhausted. So that explains he was being chased for blocks and blocks. I took some notes because I don't want to leave anything out, because there's some things I want to touch on tonight about when I say, or when people say, no one helped him. From the beginning, he was not helped. When he went in the bodega, he was not helped. He was shooed out, allowed to be dragged out. And some people in the comments, and it makes sense where you're coming from, you're saying, you know, you don't expect people to get involved in a knife fight. But you could at least call 911. No one is saying put yourself in harm's way, but at least you can call 911. The owner swears he called 911. I have yet to hear any released 911 tapes, and the only thing that I could think of why they weren't released is because maybe they did not respond. And that would make the city look bad. That's the only reason why I'm thinking we haven't heard these 911 tapes, okay? He claims he was on the phone for 4 minutes. What's troubling to me is because I have visited the bodega. You were on the phone with them for 4 minutes. You could have got Junior to the hospital. The hospital was right there, a block away. So by you standing on the phone for 4 minutes, if that makes you feel better, that wasn't enough. And someone else commented, well, what about the people that walked by? What about the customer in the bodega? What about the people who were upstairs taping? Anybody who didn't call 911, anybody who was watching him bleed to death on that bench, why didn't they carry him inside? Because the emergency room was right there. So I just want to touch on some things of what it means, or how with help I feel he could have lived. Now, someone said to me he was stabbed. I think I read in a comment like 60 times. I haven't seen any autopsy release or any medical release. I have not heard a doctor speak on the extent of his injuries. But from what I can see, and again, I'm a nurse, I'm not a trauma nurse, but from what I gather, the injury that caused his death, in my opinion, was the cut to the neck, which most likely was his carotid artery being cut. You could stab somebody 30, 40 times. If they're not hitting any vital organs or arteries, they can still live. So I don't consider the other cuts to be the fatal blow. Again, I don't have his medical records, so I'm guesstimating. So let's say the fatal wound was the carotid artery. Okay. Someone said to me in a comment, you keep saying put pressure, put pressure. And I feel that way. Listen, if someone cut my carotid artery right now, I'm dying, because I am 3 miles away from the hospital. And that's before 911's called. By the time the ambulance gets here, I'm gone. Okay? Because still, after the ambulance got here, I'm still 3 miles away from the hospital. Junior was right there. The biggest thing with that, from my research and from my medical knowledge, is time. Putting pressure on the wound, because you want to try to stop the bleeding. And the other thing that will help you is time. Getting to a trauma team that could clamp that artery. And he was right there. So in my opinion, if they would have assisted him, forget it, they didn't want to get involved in a knife fight. If they would have assisted him to the hospital and not let him run, because he's pumping more blood, he's leaking blood, okay? that was the final nail in the coffin. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And that's just what it is. I'm sorry. So, I took some notes with you guys of, again, I'm all over the place, and I wasn't going to do that. I was going to go by my notes, and I'm sorry. I apologize. The whole point of this video is, how could have Junior survived? Okay, so we know the owner of the bodega didn't lock the door. Maybe he did not have time to lock the door. But did he have a gun license? They're saying that he had a license to carry a gun. Maybe he could have backed them down. Okay, maybe he could have backed them down and called the cops. Okay, that wasn't done. We already know after the attack, nobody administered first aid to Junior. He was left on his own. They didn't put pressure on the wound. They didn't walk him to the ER, carry him to the ER, drive him to the ER. He was on his own. Okay? We already said the people upstairs that were taping, did they call 911? Very unlikely. Okay? And then we know, as he was sitting on the bench outside of the hospital bleeding to death, where you see him fading in and out of consciousness, because that's what happens. The carotid artery, you have a right and a left one. They supply the blood to the brain, okay? 500 mLs, that's a half of a liter. So if you have a full liter bottle that you drink your water, half of that bottle, 500 mLs, goes through those arteries per minute. So you think the attack happened, okay? We know the attack happened. 500 mLs a minute. Now he's losing all that blood. By him running, he's losing more blood. So no, at that point, did he stand a chance? No. But if somebody would have put pressure on it and got him to the hospital, I really feel that he would have lived. And I did some medical, you know, what he could have suffered. They're saying he could have suffered a stroke because of lack of oxygen to the brain. That's a stroke. Okay? So he could have been messed up. Let's say he could have made it to the hospital. He could have had some brain damage. But it is possible that he could have survived. A doctor online said surgeons do this all the time without having any bad sequel. Okay, they just clamp it and they're able to handle it. So it is possible, because of the closeness of the hospital. If he would have got to the hospital on time, there's a possibility, a good possibility he could have survived. But because we don't know how long he was sitting out on that bench before somebody recognized him, you know, and got involved, you know, time was not on his side, unfortunately. So when I say people could have helped, when I say put pressure on the wound, when I say those things, that's what I mean. I really feel that if he would have got basic first aid, just like if you cut, if your child cut yourself, what do you do when you get a cut and you're bleeding? You put pressure on it to try to stop the bleeding. And I really feel, like I said, most people will not survive that type of injury because of the distance they are from the hospital. How many people actually get stabbed and the hospital's right there where you could see a hospital? Most times you don't make it in time and the person dies because they didn't make it to the hospital on time. But I really feel, I've seen it with my own eyes. That boy could have made it to the hospital. And he could have got to trauma, and that could be that. Okay, so in 2016, cops were trained with advanced first aid. The name of this is called BLAST. B-L-A-S-T-T, and it stands for Basic Life Support and Trauma Treatment. Supposedly in 2016, all officers were given this training. The idea is to stop the bleeding, get them to the hospital, and save their life. And they were trained to deal with gunshot wounds and knife wounds, okay? A high-ranking officer was quoted by News 4 stating, "When deployed properly and in a rapid fashion, we can bridge the gap between traumatic injury and the emergency room." Okay? And they said it's unclear why those officers that were standing there did not use this training. So when I say no help again, as we can see, from the time he entered the bodega, he was put out of the bodega. He ran back into the bodega. He was put out of the bodega and told to run to the hospital. Then he gets to that bench. People are taping. They have their cell phones out. You have two cops right there. And they were actually on their way to another call, and they were flagged down. But again, they put on blue gloves for what? They did not use this blast training. Once he got into the hospital, somebody said she should sue the hospital. Honestly, by then, in my opinion, he was done because too much time had elapsed. There was no way the hospital, I feel, could have done anything because he lost too much blood. Had he gotten there sooner, let's say the attack happened, the people in the bodega carried him to the hospital, and he was in the hospital in less than 3 minutes, and let's say they were slow to react, or, you know, it was an inexperienced doctor in the ER, or, you know what I mean? Then maybe she would have a lawsuit with the hospital, but I don't see her having a lawsuit with the hospital. Again, I was not present. I'm just going by from the scene on the bench. It does not look like, you know, the hospital could do anything at that point. When it all comes down to it, I think for myself, and for a lot of us who are really, really involved with this case and really consumed by this case, I just had to tell myself today, going over all of the what ifs and even going back to that phone call with Jason, because I seen another interview with his mother, and she told a little bit different story of what Jason told her. And Jason went to the police station with her that night, you know, after, you know, she learned her son passed and everything. And she said Jason told him that Junior told him he was going home. He just had to go meet somebody. So all of the scenarios, was it the sex tape, all of it, you know, was it just wrong place, wrong time? The reality of the situation is things happen for a reason, and unfortunately we might not understand it, but this was God's will. If it wasn't God's will, this would not have happened. To us, it doesn't seem fair, especially if, you know, a good kid, you know, maybe we're not shocked because, you know, someone else was killed in Brooklyn. I mean, if you turn on the news, somebody's dying every day, okay, state to state, especially in New York. At least I can speak for New York. Somebody's dying every day. And I guess I told my husband tonight at dinner, I guess it doesn't make it right. A life is a life. But when it's someone who's involved in the streets, a drug dealer or somebody who's in the gang, you're not really as shocked because, you know, this is what you signed up for. You want to be in a gang. You want to be shooting at people. Well, the time is going to come when someone's going to shoot at you. So you're not surprised. But when you have a kid that comes from a good home, and you could tell he came from a good home. When I see the videos of him when he was alive, just laughing and dancing and just being a teenager, and the fact that he wanted to be a police officer, he was looking for a job to help his mother financially. When you see it happen to somebody like that, it's just like you just can't imagine. And the fact that we've seen his last moments, okay, we've never seen this before. At least I can speak for myself. I mean, maybe once in a while you might see something caught on surveillance tape, but, you know, my husband said, well, that happens all the time in the Bronx. You know, he's not, there's been other juniors, and I'm not taking away from anybody else's passing. Nobody deserves to lose a child. Nobody deserves to lose their life. Let's just be clear about that. But I guess I've never seen this before. This is something that I've never seen. And as a mother, how could you not feel compassion for this lady, for the father, for the sister, for, you know, I'm a grandmother. So how could you not feel compassion for this family? And we've seen them grief. We've seen her hugging her dead son in the emergency room. We've seen the funeral. We you know, it's like we're there with her. You know what I mean? And I just have to accept that this has happened, and how we can help. Because somebody, you know, said, well, you didn't help either. How we can help. I know for me personally, I'm going to be paying more attention. I mean, and I know some people don't have faith in the justice system. I know people don't have faith in politicians. I can confess that I'm one of them. But I'm going to be paying more attention when these matters come up. If these people want our votes, if these people want our money or whatever it is, what are you going to do? What I like about the Cuomo anti-gang initiative, what he said, when something like this happens, we have to do something positive. Don't just say you're in our thoughts and prayers. Do something. And I really hope he means it. And that 19 million, I hope it makes it to the inner cities. I hope it makes it to the areas that they said, because money seems to disappear, greed and other things. But I want to be positive, but it's just very hard, because I feel like, I've told you guys in a previous video, I feel like Junior was failed way before the night of his death. Because I feel that they knew about this gang. They knew about the dangers. I mean, 2 weeks before he passed, I remember seeing on the news somebody was stabbed and killed. And one of the mothers said, this is why we don't let our kids outside at night. And that's really sad. That's really, really sad. And I feel that they knew that. And I really feel that, what were they doing about it then? Maybe this could have been prevented. I mean, these gangs are nothing new. This street violence is nothing new. Somebody was just killed. Another young boy, an African-American boy. I'm going to talk about his story eventually. And again, it was on tape of this boy bleeding to death after he was shot in the neck walking with his girlfriend. And he wanted to be a judge. And he was a good basketball player. So our youth, you know, they're at risk just going outside, and this has just got to stop. It can't be acceptable. It can't be okay just to turn your other head. And I'm kind of disappointed with the president, because he was, you know, he had his MS-13 meetings, and then what? And, you know, and the only reason why personally I think he is involved is because he's trying to push this immigration thing. You know, somebody had said that it was illegals that killed Junior. You know what I mean? He's so busy worrying about this immigration bill and keeping out terrorists. What about the terrorists that live in this country? The citizens who are terrorizing their neighbors. I don't know, guys. I don't know. I know Junior's mom had said that the court date was the 16th, but I don't think they went to court today. Somebody mentioned in the comments that the court date was pushed back to the 18th. So if I hear anything, I definitely will let you guys know. I'm going to try to have a good night's sleep tonight. I had 2 days off. It's back to work, but I'm going to try not to look at anything related to this case for the remainder of the night. And I appreciate you guys' comments. I appreciate, you know, your feedback. My videos are not monetized. I'm not doing this for money. I usually do Dollar Tree hauls. So I love YouTube. I'm on it all the time. So I'm not doing this to get more subbies. I'm not doing this for any of those reasons. This just really has truly touched me. Okay? Thank you guys for watching. All right? I have some pictures to attach at the end of this video. Good night.